afternoon to everybody who are joining us today for this special event with the Successful Bookkeeper. I am excited to have some of my friends here for Modern Firm Owner's Guide to Overcoming Accounting Hurdles with Automation. Now, if you don't know these faces that are here, I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves, but we've actually got Nick that's here with Fordley. We've got Vikram with File, and of course, Allison with Bookkeep. Myself, my name is Matthew Fulton. I am also a cloud-based accountant. I'm excited to actually have my first chance to be part of the Successful Bookkeeper event process. And I want to thank these companies for allowing me to be here to help kind of moderate and be part of the conversation. With that, Nick, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us what Forley does? And then we'll go Vikram and then to Allison, please.
Sure. Thank you, Matthew. Yes, so I'm the CEO and co-founder at Forwardly. We are the fastest way to receive money from your clients. So as soon as a payment is made, you'll get money in your bank account within 60 seconds, most of the time less than 30 seconds. We are an award-winning AR and AP solution with complete workflow and our revolutionary four-way sync with accounting systems where we can sync the data with your customers and vendors. Because payments are received instantly, we help small businesses to improve their cash flow. We eliminate all manual workflow, very much tied to the topic of the automation of this webinar, and because payments are reconciled and synced immediately. And for how we are different from others, our focus is only on the instant payment. That's our unique sauce. And if you want to know more, go and visit our website, forwardly.com.
Thank you so much, Nick. Now, Vikram, on some of the other side of the spectrum, do you mind introducing yourself as well as File to the audience, please?
Thanks, Matthew. Hi, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. And yeah, my name is Vikram. I head partnerships and alliances at a company called File. File is a differentiated expense management solution. We help automate the process around credit card reconciliation and also reimbursements or out-of-pocket expenses management. We make it super simple for users and admins. We are the only solution to have real-time feeds from any credit card from any network, MasterCard, Visa, network, or Amex, regardless of which bank is the issuer. And we also use text messaging and AI to make this whole process very, very easy and seamless for everybody involved.
Thank you very much.
One more, reach us out.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, of course, Allison with Bookkeep.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Bookkeep, if you have not heard of us, is a secure data bridge, and we sit between about 60 and counting e-commerce, and you've got the e-commerce selling solutions as well as the payment solutions, all the popular ones, Shopify, Amazon, Square, PayPal, Etsy, all the big ones. And then also a lot of the verticalized point of sale solutions so for example, Toast and Clover and Trees for cannabis, and then just some really rando ones that you have never heard of, but we connect with. And this problem that we solve is that when you are in a multi-channel selling environment, the accounting is very complex. And so what happens in reality is most accountants and bookkeepers will do the best they can. They basically book it from the bank payouts. It's not, you all know it's not the right way to do it. You're missing all sorts of complexity in the accounting. And you're basically putting your client on a cash basis, which isn't appropriate for many. But what we do is we create daily, we pull the data in directly. You set your client up. It's so easy. It's just sign up for Bookkeep, connect the clients, QBO, Xero, Zoho Books, or Sage Intact, and then map it. You connect your selling and payment channels, and then you do a mapping. And so we make all of these gnarly apps look exactly the same to you. And the magic runs overnight, and you come in the morning to these beautiful journal entries that are done with the payments automatically reconciled and matching your bank feeds. So it is magic, and I I joined the company 9 months ago because I couldn't believe how much I needed that way back when I was a bookkeeper when that technology wasn't available. I also want to give a quick shout out to File because I used File, excuse me, at my last company and it rocks. So I have not used Forwardly yet, but that's something that we'd love to use. So I'm super excited about this webinar and hearing all the tips and things that in particular Vikram and Nick and you, Matthew, have, and I'll try and add a few. So
Well, thank you so much as well. I actually am very fortunate that I've been able to work with and I'm currently working with all three of these apps. So a big part of the practice that I do nowadays is trying to help different businesses and quite often different accountants understand what pieces of technology to connect together. So workflow design. You know, we've got these cloud environments, and we've got the ability to connect these different apps, but you need to know which apps to connect and what order to do it in correctly to get the best results.
and also what job do you want that? I think there's a
Yeah.
fundamental thing that at some point we should address is, and maybe at the beginning is, what job do you want are you hiring the app to do? Because I think that's a sort of a fundamental thing. Is it moving the data? Is it storing the data? Is it receiving money? Are you spending money, paying money? Yeah.
They're good questions. So for those in the audience, want to let you know that during the first part of this, I've got some questions I'd planned to try to ask to get some insights from the folks up here. But we'd love to see your feedback, questions in the Q&A, of course, and we'll be going through those as well as your comments in chat. As you see me looking to the side, that's because I'm trying to make sure to bring engagement back. It makes me think about like when it comes to like trying to automate certain bookkeeping tasks. With all of your experience, all three of you, what are some of the best bookkeeping tasks you feel that can be automated?
Ooh, who wants to go first?
Maybe I can go.
Nick, you go.
Yeah. So, that's a very good question, Matthew. And I believe almost all tasks, around 80–90% of the tasks that we see in our day-to-day bookkeeping, they can be automated, except some edge cases. We have reached to a stage there today, and we can start with our customer acquisition. Even if you have a website and you have let's say a form there that get emailed to you, and then you spend your time entering your data. That's pretty insane and time consuming, very inefficient way to do the work. Now we have the technology where you can collect and automate that data, pushing the data back into your CRM, whatever CRM you are using, or even Excel or QuickBooks Online Zero, all those kind of things. Like I work with some bookkeepers, and I know they are collecting their documents directly from their clients through the Dropbox or SharePoint, those kind of systems. Even when you are onboarding a new client, I know some bookkeepers, they still send emails and paper document and ask them to sign and email them back. But now we have a technology like PandaDoc or DocHub, that can allow you to get e-signatures from your clients.
Or Listio.
Yep.
There's an
Yeah,
app
that's true.
all in one communication app.
All in one
Listio.
communication, yeah.
So,
And some of these platforms, even if you are starting small, right, very right, Allison, like DocHub, we used them in the past, and they allowed 5 clients onboarding in a month, free. It's a free app to use. So we have seen the innovation on the bank feed, automation, or reconciliation. Those things are pretty much, sorted out. I would say close to 90–95%. But now we have this AI and ChatGPT. I think we will be touching close to 99% pretty much. It's disappointing that so many of us, they are still sending those invoices manually and trying to collect and have those overdue invoices and open AR when we have automatic collection of the payments. It's possible to collect those payments automatically, put them on autopilot. Anytime you do some kind of job for the clients, the payments will come to your bank account automatically. you are not at the mercy of your client, because I have seen it. I've been working with accountants and bookkeepers for over 20 years, and we have seen and talked to some of my friends there. They have been in these situations. They have done a great job, provided them a great product and service, and but there will be someone who didn't want to pay, and now all of a sudden you have a bad debt. So we can eliminate all those kind of bad debts if we have auto collection enabled for all of those clients. Similar automation we can do on AP, and I'm sure file helps there as well on the spend management side. So those are some of the few things that comes to my mind right now.
So before I ask Vikram to add on, I want to ask the audience real quickly in the chat. There was a lot of things that we're talking about there that had to do with paper. When was the last time you bought a ream of paper for your company? In the chat, just let us know. Love to hear, like, are you becoming more of a paperless environment? Because I feel like paperless goes hand in hand with automation to most.
And yeah, it does kind of. I'd also like a follow-on question to people out there in the audience land there. What is the most painful thing that you do every day?
Yes.
And Vic, let's hear your answer too. I mean, Nick gave us a lot of things to think about there. What do you think about automation as far as where we should start?
I like where you're headed, Allison, because I mean, I like to think about it from the perspective of, any task that you would do more than twice in a day can be automated. If you think about it, you should not be ideally repeating tasks which you're not applying your mind into more than twice. If you're doing
I think that's what Nick was saying too. It's like all the things he was talking about are repetitive tasks, right?
Exactly. Right.
I like the repetitive tasks in the same day though. So the reason
the same day is a really good way to look at it, isn't it?
Because look, everybody says, "Oh, you should never be doing the same thing over and over again." Guess what? I used to waste so much time trying to find ways to automate things that I still have not earned back the amount of time after trying to automate things that never should have been automated. But that's a decent indicator if you're doing the same thing multiple times in the day. That feels pretty legit to me. I like that.
And frustrating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing is, from my experience working with accountants, the other thing that I've also figured out is, if there's a way to have not so productive communications with your clients, like follow-ups, you got to use automation for that. Try and see, in my mind, I think if we are able to optimize the kind of communication that we have, especially if you're talking to clients on a regular basis, let those be happy conversations. Let those be productive conversations rather than reminding them or annoying them to do some tasks, which everybody, just hates. So use technology to bug them almost, and send reminders and, get your job done.
We used to call it auto nag. Like when I worked at Liscio, I didn't mention that I worked at Liscio before. And by the way, the shout out to Liscio is because it's an awesome product. We used to call it auto nag, Vic. So, and Nick was talking about, collections, right? Like eliminate bad debt. Like these are nasty things that happen to people, right? Where like the good bookkeeper is doing their work but they've got clients, they got employees of clients, for example, that they're trying to manage the expenses for, and nobody's responding, right? Or they've got their own clients who, to Nick's point earlier, don't pay their bill. I mean, then you're in this horrible situation. And I think we all know that bookkeepers have huge hearts, like huge hearts, like oversized, huge hearts, right? And so they go at it with love, and to have to be that kind of negative person, it's really not fun. So
exactly.
And I want to talk about the fun stuff. So sorry, can I jump in and just give my quick answer to that question about okay. So Nick talked about all the things that were just really very manual and just repetitive and over and over and over again, and just all the areas that we can. And then Vic talked about narrowed it in for me, which I think was a really great insight. things that you're going to do more than twice in a single day, which is to
Yeah.
me, Vic, I've never really thought about it that way. And now that I'm thinking about it from an update from a revenue standpoint, because it's really interesting that we all, kind of cover money in some way, right? If you think about it, if you are a client, if you have a number of e-commerce or retail or restaurant or cannabis dispensary clients, and you want to keep them up to date, you literally have to go in every single day for every client and download up to
Yeah.
10 payment and selling channels worth of data, and then make a journal entry and then book that. It is, I think it's fun like the first time you do it.
For the first 10 transactions, it may be fun. Like, oh, I
Maybe.
did this. This is
Well,
exciting.
yeah, because it's a
But
little
that's it.
bit of a treasure hunt, right? Where's this number? Where's this number? And then getting it all to balance. So I think it's kind of fun the first time you do it, and then it quickly gets old. And then you're like, I don't want to do it. I'm spending all this time. What could I be doing? And so that's the other thing is if you find yourself doing something that is really just taking the life out of you, and
Yes.
it's just a drudge and you don't want to do it, that is your first thing. Now while we were chatting, while we were chatting, there was some great comments that came in.
I saw them.
Yeah, do you want to read out Mariette's and then
Yeah.
also
Terry's
Terry's?
got another great one as well. Yeah. So, Mariette, always a pleasure to see you on here. You're always filled with wisdom, and thank you for sharing with everybody. So, she started by saying, I think automation is a mindset shift. Once you understand its value, you always choose automation every time.
Yeah.
She followed up by saying, I know this is also culture change and conversation to be had for this mindset shift to begin, but once they get it, they're all in. Mariette, I agree with you, but I also feel what's interesting about automation in the app world, when we first learn about apps and the ability to add apps on, we all go app crazy and we want to connect every single app in the entire world to everything we possibly
Don't do
can.
it. Don't do it.
And
Yeah.
then you realize it doesn't necessarily do what you need it to, and you start to dwindle down and really focus in
Yeah.
on the ones you need for your practice. And that's when it really, really becomes very powerful.
And you get really good at those and you streamline everything and you are able to
Yeah.
really, again,
Yeah.
I sort of talked about this earlier, like pick the job that each app is going to solve. Vic, what did you want to say?
No, so I was just gonna build on that, right? I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of us know that there's a need for automation,
Mhm.
but how do you really identify what aspects can help us become more efficient by automation, right? I mean, there are two ways of looking at it. I know of a technology that can solve for this problem, or I know of a problem that needs a solution, and I look for the technology that can solve for it. So it's almost like flipping the coin. And what I've seen time and again is if you're able to document what, am I not audible?
A little
it better?
closer, you should be great. So
Maybe
thank
come
you
a
for
little
letting us know,
closer.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, so what I was getting to was if there's a way for us to document where we are spending time. I mean, as accountants, I'm sure we all are on the stopwatch, we're all measuring time. But I think what we ignore to do is, we tend to see what client interfaces, we tend to measure only the client interfaces, but not really measure the background tasks that we end up doing as well. In addition to tracking down repetitive tasks, just as an example, from an expense management workflow or a credit card reconciliation workflow, we did some study, right? What we found out was for creating every expense report, an accountant would spend roughly 23 minutes.
Oh, I believe it. And employees spend just as much time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you measure it is when you realize how much of your valuable time you're not actually measuring, not charging the client, but it acts like a background work that you're doing and for nobody's job. And it's like, nobody's appreciating you to do it. You're not charging for it. Nobody's benefiting from you having to do that manual process. So why do it? right? So there could be a better way of doing it. So if you're able to break down every activity that you do and measure how much time you're spending on each of these activities, that could be a way to flip the coin over and say, you know what, these tasks, if automated, can free up so much of my time, which I can then use to provide higher value services like advisory, let's say.
You have
Right.
to be willing to look yourself really in the eye and be very honest about the amount of time too, because
That's the
it's
hard
really
part.
shocking. It's really shocking because your brain wants to say, "Oh, that was quick."
Yeah, that is the difficult part. I still, in my mind, I always try to say, "Oh, okay, that's going to take me 15 minutes." If anybody does anybody know of anything in accounting that takes only 15 minutes? If you do, please feel free to put it in the chat. And Nick, I know it takes a lot less with Forley to send payments from business to business, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah, but Nick
that's
can
way
talk.
faster.
But Nick can talk chapter and verse
Yes.
about how long it takes to try and collect, like to do it the other ways. Like how, if you didn't have forwardly, how do you have to do it? Oh,
I know.
right?
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
painful.
Very painful. And I was just reading an article yesterday. Companies or accounting firms, I guess it was on a blog somewhere, wrote some content about that one, that accounting firms, bookkeeping firms who are using some kind of automation to eliminate this kind of data entry work, like the entering receipt data, their revenue is 39% more than the firms. No, 39% per staff,
Wow,
compared to the firms that are not doing work that way. So,
that's a
that's
significant
a big
improvement
number, almost 50% more revenue for the business. That's mind blowing
with the same costs. So
with the
because
same cost. Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
not adding staff.
yeah.
Nick, if you can find that article and share, you probably can't do it live, but maybe Jane's got it
Yeah.
and
Maybe I'll
share
share
it.
it. I'll share it with you after that.
You know what we can
Yeah,
do also? We can put it in a guide because we're going to create a guide from this discussion and send it out.
sure. Yeah.
But those types of data points are so valid. They're so eye-opening because if you're especially for a solo bookkeeper, like some of the folks on this call who are listening in are solos. And so it's just them. So that's the one thing. They can't get more of them. There's only one of them.
Yep.
But
Matter of fact, let's ask them.
choosing the right apps, right? Right, Matthew? Like choosing the right automations is actually a way to get more of you.
It
Yeah.
is. There's always a piece that I call it the automation equation. Sounds like, what
I
was
have
the,
never heard this, Matthew. Do tell.
there's a certain aspect to the automation equation where you need to evaluate right off the bat, what is the the cost of doing a process manually? And when I explain it this way, it's going to seem super, super obvious, right? But how much time are you spending resources to do something manually, not only to do the task, but to check and review and find errors and to correct errors? There's your manual part of the process first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next part is you need to look at what is going to be the cost to automate something. And this is usually, if you're creating an automation, it's going to be a front-loaded expense. So you try to figure out somewhat of what that cost is going to be. You're going to hold that number aside. And I usually say divide it by 12 months. So over a year's time, it may be shorter depending on your situation. And then you're going to try to take a look and evaluate what's the full cost of the automated process, the time spent still on doing the work with the automation in place and the time spent correcting errors. And ultimately, that should be less. That plus the 1/12 of what the cost is, if those pieces together are not less than what your manual process is, then you really need to evaluate, is it the right thing to automate? And that's a super simplified version of it, but it's a really, really good way to determine, should you spend the time and money, energy, and resources to doing it.
And also,
So,
Matthew, what I have seen in most cases, anytime you are doing like any work you are doing manually, it's almost always going to be more expensive than automating it, unless you have cheap labor from India or China. It's almost always the case. Yeah, and you can back it up with your equation. Definitely, we'll get there.
There was one other part of the equation which I didn't mention, which is the cost of maintaining the automation. And I think that's an important one. So when when we're talking about a modern firm and trying to, automate as much as possible, not only just for the firm, but for the clients, one of the scariest things for us as accountants is when the different app companies are not talking together, they're not developing together, and these automations break and it ends up costing us additional time.
Absolutely.
How is that something each of your companies are kind of paying attention to ensure that your users are getting the best results?
So Matthew, if I can go first on that. And before that, I just want to add on to the previous point that we were trying to make. One thing which we typically end up overlooking, and I've heard this time and again, I've seen this time and again, is the cost of change management.
Thank you. Yep.
Right. So what does it take to change the mindset and the standard working procedure of a client and their employees by introducing a new solution or a new technology, right? Is it gonna blend into their existing process, or do they need to rip and replace their existing processes or their banking relationships or something that's going to introduce change? We did a survey around adoption rates, and because I mean at File we have sort of oversimplified the way we interface with applications, so much so that you can submit receipts, and you can manage your entire credit card workflow using text messaging, regular text messaging, and you can also use existing credit cards. So we did a survey wherein by introducing text-based interface, we saw a bump of about 48% adoption rates. And that was purely because we are embedding ourselves into everyday applications and reducing the change required from the behavior of existing employees, right? So change management is often overlooked, is what I feel. And I think that could be something that the cost of change management is something that we're looking at.
Yeah, and Vikram, I just want to say I think you're just spot on there, because having worked at large companies and small companies as an employee, of course, right? Some systems are very, very difficult. The lift is very high. We used some of the bigger the huge ones at Intuit, and there were some that we just the employees just couldn't even get through without calling help tech support.
QuickBase.
And then there was
sorry.
Don't smack on QuickBase. Oh, I love QuickBase. Oh my gosh. Oh, you had to go there, didn't you?
I had to go there. I'm sorry.
No, okay. I'm thinking of some of the big ones. Oh my God, Concur was so difficult to deal with, right? It was so hard, and it was a 900-pound hammer, and it worked, but could you lift it, right? Sorry if anybody's out there listening from Concur. I just found it a really very difficult one to use. But File, I didn't need any training on. I didn't need any training on File, right? And it was a case of I just opened it up and I just knew exactly what to do. And then they kept adding these extra things, and now I can text things. It was just so great. So the other thing I want to add to this is, yes, there's change management. So you have to look at who's involved in the app. Now, for example, something like Bookkeep, the client is not involved.
Amen.
Okay. Forwardly, I think, is the client involved, Nick, in Forwardly?
Yes, they are.
Okay, yeah. How involved? Like talk through about how
very
easy it is
little
for them.
involved. Very little involved. Let's say you are an accountant and you are adding a client and you want them to use Forwardly, and because we deal with the money and payments and money movement, so we need to comply with some bank regulations, and one of the requirement is doing some kind of KYC, KYB on the business.
That stands for know your customer and know your
customer,
business.
right?
Yeah.
So we need to know those kind of things about them. Yeah.
But on an ongoing basis, I guess what I'm trying to say is, File
ongoing basis, the way what we have seen with most accountants for the bill payment side, we have seen it. As an accountant or bookkeeper, you will approve a bill and you will just send it for approval to the owner or someone in the company, and they have to push the button. That's
Okay,
what we
but
have
it
seen.
doesn't go like File does, where the accountant or the bookkeeper will facilitate the sign up. So then the client, what we're talking about, the client, like the bookkeeper's client, will sign up for File, and then the client's employees have to use it. So I think that's what we're talking about here. When Vic, correct me if I'm wrong, because there is an important thing that we need to hone in on here. When you're looking at an app, who are the players that need to work with it? And forwardly, there's this one-time setup that the client needs to be involved in, and then they just use it. Bookkeep, one-time connection that the client needs to, it's the handshake, right? They have to connect their Amazon and their PayPal and their Square and their what have you, right? Their Shopify.
Yep.
But there isn't an ongoing lift from there. It's just like this one-time connection, and then it goes. So the lift is very, very light for some of the technology apps. And then there's also a change management aspect. For Bookkeep, the only change management aspect that you'd have to do is to say to your team, if you had a team, let's say you're a team of bookkeepers, we're going to use this app to take away all the drudge work that we have to do with booking all the revenue and reconciling the payments from all these gnarly selling and payment channels. And then we're just going to move forward. Like, it's really quite simple. It's literally like you make a decision. You don't want to do all those journal entries anymore, that treasure hunt every day across all your clients, across all the channels. And then it just works, right? And I think similar, Nick, to Forwardly, it's kind of like you get it connected and then it works. It's not an ongoing thing, right? Like every day where you have to go in and do so, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I may interject here real quickly, as an accountant that actually I'm using all three of these, and just so everybody knows, it was not a scripted or planned conversation part of this, but as a person who actually knows these three apps and have been using it, I want to kind of share, because Sharon was asking I don't even know what to automate.
Yeah.
So with each of these scenarios, I have connected Forwardly for my firm, and I now am able to set it up and send out requests to be paid by the people, my clients, and I'm setting it for some of my actual clients to use with their clients as well.
So they can get paid.
Exactly. Yep. And so there's two different types of relationships there. The first one I'll say is, for me getting paid by my clients, it becomes very easy. The setup initially is on my side because I have to validate who I am, that it's my bank account, I'm a legit business, so forth, which really is not difficult at all to do, and it's very, very important. I just recently made a YouTube video that shows the client side, that when you ask somebody to make a payment, what they see and what they have to do, and it's very, very minimal lift, which is super important.
Yeah.
So from that side, what that's done is it's helping me to automate a major portion of my business, where I think a lot of us, for some reason, we're horrible at, is collecting the dang money for the work we do. I don't know why we all don't do that enough. I'm horrible about that.
Don't you want to get paid, people?
I know, trust me. So now with File is another one that I actually started using prior to Scaling New Heights to be tracking expenses of the trip itself. And thank you again, File, for the wonderful event we had out there at Scaling. I'm now going to be implementing this for one of my good friends, who's a client who's now a good friend with a construction company, because the biggest problem we have is they're going and buying different materials for these different jobs. And I cannot get this paper-friendly person best friend, but man, he walks around with a pad of paper, and trying to get him to stop doing that with his people and getting copies of receipts or expenses and be able to sign
plus
it.
they leave them in the truck, right? And then they put the coffee cup down on them, and then you can't read them.
Totally. So it's helping. This is an example of where my client is using it internally with their business, with their employees, to help automate the data collection that's necessary. So I'm not having to hound and ask, and then at the end of the year, having to go and break it all down, because I've got another way that's an easy lift of employees for them to start using these things, because it's just a text message. It's so easy to do.
Yeah.
And then
Actually, it's also about it's also about the timing, right, Matthew? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
the fact that you're reminded as soon as you spend, regardless of which bank it is, that's that's a big lift for somebody who's used to just throwing the receipts in a shoebox or a glove
good point.
compartment.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different experience. Yeah,
Great
definitely.
point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially with
We're right
all the
inside the
sub-credit
journey,
cards.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to
And
give Bookkeep real quickly their part, because with Bookkeep, a perfect example, I've been working with a local e-commerce company that has multiple sales channels and multiple payment gateways. And I ended up having to fix a lot of their stuff from the prior year, which took forever. This year, we've set up Bookkeep, and it was amazing. Like, we even got started later into the year. I was able to go in, request the back dates of information, pulls all of it in,
Yeah.
where it's creating a different journal entry for the sales receipt, different journal entry for the deposit. And the best part was the bank fee deposits are all matching. And it just, oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh,
really
the
nice.
amount of
It
time
kind
it
of is,
saved.
it's really eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going back, that's the other thing is cleanup. I don't know how many of you do cleanup for your clients. Like you get a company mid-year and you realize, or you get them close to the end of the year, or
Yeah.
maybe you're helping a CPA clean the books up for tax, right? There's various different situations, and you find that it's books are wrong, right? Like the
yeah,
revenue's all like, and e-commerce is one where especially if the client's been doing the books themselves, they don't know, right? They don't know what they're doing, right? Generally they don't, and that's why they need you. But you can go back years if you want. And so that's kind of cool. Is like it changes how you think about data. You don't have to be thinking about data as a today and forward thing anymore. You can actually, in certain instances, get today and forward and back, which is a very interesting thing. To try and reconstruct that manually would be, well,
It can be difficult. I find that,
and time is being expensive, and well, yeah.
And the other aspect is, we need to understand, many bookkeepers and or us, we are not tech savvy people, some of us, and it's a challenge to work with the technology. When we talk about the change management, that's the other thing that we need to think about. And what I have seen is in some accounting firms, there's a tech person who is responsible for implementing the technology, developing the process and making sure the bookkeeping integration is working nice. So those are the kind of people maybe we need, even if part-time or fractional basis in case you need to build a new app integration. You are busy, you're a solopreneur, you don't have the time. So leveraging those kind of channels, they might help, because you might be very busy. As an accountant, we are always busy chasing next deadline, whether it's a payroll or sales tax. And the thing is, even though we believe these all three apps, they are very simple, very intuitive, but it's hard. It's very hard to learn and implement something new, and we are aware of that. So leveraging those kind of resources, that might be of help too.
Yeah, and Sharon was asking, and I was answering. I think it's just a great pile on to what you were saying just now, Nick. Sharon says, "Thank you. Are there resources on how to set up automations for each task?" And she's actually looking to roll out Anchor next month, which is there's been a little chat about how good Anchor is. And so how's everybody thinking about the resources available for bookkeepers to feels like that's a good question we should address.
I think this is definitely my wheelhouse to try to help provide some information on too.
Love the ball over to Matthew.
Yeah. Kelly Park's Workflow Watering Hole. Phenomenal resource.
So
Seth
that's a
David,
Facebook group you can
Facebook
ask.
group, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Facebook groups are huge. Finding people that specialize in this. Heather Satterley, Liz Scott, QB Happy Hour, they're always doing a phenomenal job of introducing different apps which will help you kind of know who to look to on certain apps to learn more from. Seth David with Nerd Enterprises is a fundamental resource. He's amazing. Yeah, shameless little plug, QB Community Live, my Facebook group,
That's
which
a good one.
has tons of people in there that can give you valuable information. So there's a lot of those types of resources. Then, I mean, Jason Stats is a pretty popular YouTube person that starts like introducing some things. He had some really good automation tips and tricks on his YouTube. So hopefully these are all things that will kind of help. But if anybody else knows of something that should be suggested,
Well, Dave's chiming in. There's the Successful Bookkeeper group, Facebook group.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Why
Dave.
did we
It's
why did
totally-
we forget that one? We're on their webinar. Sharon was asking if we would include all these things in the chat right now. We're actually going to put them in the guide. We're going to collaborate on a guide that we'll send out to everybody afterwards. And the other thing I want to add to, in addition to what you just said, Matthew, is each app will have their own resources, right? So, like for example, if you're using QuickBooks Online, you're going to get certified in QuickBooks Online, right? If you're using Bookkeep, just take the 1-hour certification class. It's pretty easy. I know Forwardly and File has great resources for people getting started and learning. So
those are things I always look for when I'm looking at apps to begin with. It's going to be the support and resources as is part of my decision-making process every single time.
yeah.
You want to make sure you've got what you need to get you started, because most of the time when we're trying to learn something new, it's during random hours, not necessarily during the middle of the day, like business hours of an app. So you want enough information to help get you started and rolling.
Like a
and then-
knowledge base, are you sort of thinking like,
Yeah.
is there enough in their knowledge base? Yeah. Yeah. And is it
how up to date it is,
searchable?
videos, all that
Is
stuff.
it searchable? Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the stuff that, you know, we can be automating, people have been automating. What about the future? You know, what do you guys think some of the future trends are going to be towards automation that, you know, we should be preparing for now or trying to get in front of to be the specialist in it?
Who wants to go first? I have one
Let's-
thing.
No.
I have one thing. Mine is really fast, guys, because I know you guys are going to actually you're going to really be able to go deep on this. I think what's going to happen, at least in my little corner of the world, as far as revenue automation in e-commerce, retail, restaurant, and cannabis is, I think every single bookkeeper out there is going to have to know how to deal with e-commerce in some format, because everything's e-commerce. Everybody's using Square or PayPal or Stripe or even if they're a brewery, they're selling
Payment
merch
gateways.
on
Yeah.
a payment gateway. So I think just as we continue to evolve in this area, I think having a good fundamental of what to do in those situations is just going to be vital for everybody. It's just going to be table stakes. It's just kind of like how you know how to do sales tax or you know how to do payroll. You got to know it.
Mhm.
So that's my little 2 cents, but I want to hear what Nick and Vikram have to say.
Sure, maybe I'll speak from my background based on the technology. I think one of the big change that we are going to see in or impact our bookkeeping and accounting profession is the AI. You know, I know I have been hearing about that for the last 20 years or so or longer, but I think we are finally reaching to a stage where we are going to see some real use cases. We are also exploring how we can completely automate bookkeeping and what part of that can be done. Can we take the with some rule changes coming in the US 1033, the bank feeds would be available in real time from the banks starting next year. So can the bookkeeping can be reversed or can be fully automated? So those are the kind of things, you know, like personally, you know, since the launch of ChatGPT, I have maybe used Google maybe a couple of times only. I use these tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity, you know, those kind of browsers to stay up to date on what's happening. So those kind of, and I found myself, you know, anything that used to take me half an hour, now it takes seconds. So we are going to see an impact on Google stock in coming days. But from our perspective of bookkeeping, like ChatGPT, they just launched their desktop app. I'm pretty sure most of you might have heard of the Right Tool app from Hector Garcia. It's a Chrome extension, and it sits on in your browser, and it just put your QuickBooks on steroids, basically, with
Turbocharges it, I always say. Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing.
those kind of things. So why that app is so successful? Because it has a context of your QuickBooks data and everything, right? With the new this ChatGPT desktop, now when you have that thing, I know they launched it for Mac, and PC is coming pretty soon, but once you have that app on your PC, it will have complete context of what's open on your screen. If you have three screens, and what's happening on those three screens. And I have seen some demo where it can read the data from one app to another app, and it can advise you. So I think within a few years, we'll be seeing that a new person joining the company where they don't need any training. They will get these kind of open AI agents. We call them agents that are going to help. And we'll see more and more company, instead of hiring employees, they are going to invest into training those agents. So those are the few things that we need to be aware of. But is it how it's going to replace the bookkeepers, accountants? No, it's not. It's going to help you do your job better. That's the way it is, right? Because if I'm a newbie, and let's say there's a rental income, and I'm entering in the Drake tax or some other platform, so I don't know where to put the rental income in on the tax form, but the app will be able to pinpoint where to put that information. So those kind of use cases I think in the next 2-3 years we'll have almost all of us should be using some kind of agents to help us augment whatever we do on day-to-day basis. Yeah. Bill payment, we will see a lot of automation on that side as well.
I think the key with all that automation, then Vikram, I want to head over to, is it will be so ingrained into the technology that we won't even realize, we won't remember that we're using it at some point. It will just,
Right.
it's going to become a part of the process. And you said something, you were talking earlier specifically about, will AI replace our jobs? I certain aspects of our work will go away, but nobody should be concerned about that as long as you are continuing your education in the different realms of how to best serve your clients in the different businesses.
Yeah.
Your business, you're just going to up level or upskill your practice. So,
And I think you're going to have a better time of it. You're just going to have more fun, because you'll be able to use, I think one of you, I don't know whether it was Nick or Vic said earlier, you'll be able to use your brain. Like,
oh, amen.
What really makes you special, if you really think about it, is your ability to take all the data and take all this chaos and create order. So that's the first thing. That's what a bookkeeper does, right? And well, really, let's boil it down to what you do. You take these pieces of the puzzle, you put it all together, you make sure it's compliant, and then you advise your clients. So the piece about the advising the clients up until, let's say, the last 5, maybe, we started talking about advisory, 15 years ago, but we really got there about maybe 5, 6, maybe 10. Let's say 10. Let's go 10 max. But now we're really like, everybody kind of gets it, what it really means to do advisory. But in order to do advisory, what do you need? You need accurate, up-to-date books, and you need time.
Yeah.
And they have to be quick. They can't be like, you can't advise your clients based on last quarter's books. Like, you just can't. I mean, unless their business is absolutely consistent, never changes, and nobody has that. Nobody has a business that never changes, right? So you've got to have time to do it. So that means you've got to free up, you've got to get work done in a different way. You've got to delight your clients. So you've got to get them paid quickly, like forwardly enabled. It's like, oh my gosh, wow, I got it paid in 30 seconds. I can't even believe it. I saw the money, I could barely blink. It's not even time to make a cup of tea, and I've got the money. You've got to delight your clients' employees. like File does, and get everything. So, and as I said, the only app here other than Bookkeep that I've used is File, and I could tell you, so easy.
Yes.
I was just like, what is this? What is this, and why didn't I have this in my hands, for like the last 5 years? But you also need to be able to have all of that come together, and then you can advise your clients, and that's where the really fun stuff begins. Is because then you really get to use your heart, and you use their knowledge of your client and their dreams and their goals, and you help them meet their goals. And so that's the fun part. That's the really satisfying part of being a bookkeeper. And you can still rock a good spreadsheet. We're not saying you can't, but
AI is going to make that even easier too. Now
but
you'll
you
just be like,
still,
"Make
if
a
you
pivot
want to
table
get
for me."
down with your bad self in a spreadsheet, you can do it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just don't have to live your life that way, right? So anyways, that's kind of, I don't know. What do you think, Vic?
Absolutely. I think that you said it. I mean, going after, if I were to just sort of break it down into about 4 different stages of how we view the future, right, of bookkeeping. Starting with, we're all talking about AI, right? But AI is really, about automated decision making, right? Now, before we get to AI, there's a whole lot of stuff that can be done, in each of our sort of individual roles that we do, especially around bookkeeping and managing clients' books, right? I mean, the starting point to that is identifying what processes are we currently running, and by that, designing effective workflows. And going back to the point that we were discussing earlier, Matthew, is the sort of workflow doctor.
I love
Almost,
that
right?
name.
So he goes in
love that.
there,
Trademark coming
looks at
soon.
the
Workflow
process.
Doctor.
The workflow
Thank you.
doctor. Do you have a domain? All right. No. So no. So really, I mean, identifying what processes are we currently running, number one. Second, transforming that into a workflow, step-by-step process of how that looks. Third, can that workflow be automated, right? And fourth, can that process be, automated in a way where repetitive tasks are taken care, something like a robotic process automation. So which means, you, rather than you taking those repetitive tasks, there is a software or a solution which does the repetitive tasks that you manage, right? So that's the next stage. And then you have, based on all of the data that you're able to sort of generate and also record using the automation, can the system automatically sort of learn what it needs to do when edge cases arrive? So that is all about machine learning, right? And based on machine learning data, if there are people who are training the system to get better at it, over a period of time, the system becomes more intelligent to sort of learn by itself. And that is AI there. So we are all talking about AI, but really, if you want to start small, relook at your workflows, relook at your processes, identify one area that you can automate, right? That could be your starting point of how you can sort of get through on this journey, right?
Yeah, and don't overlook small gains, because small incremental gains all added up. If you do a 1% improvement every week, it doesn't take you long to get a massive improvement, over time. And I forget how that works out, because it's logarithmic. So 1% and then another 1% and another 1%, and you end up with this crazy number.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't
I've
know,
heard
Nick,
of
you
that
might
too.
be
Yeah,
better. You might be better at the math than I am.
yeah.
But it is shockingly and you don't think that it's worth you doing that. So some folks think about, like, give try and save like 15 minutes every week kind of thing, or that type of thing. So there's a lot of things that you can do, but I think I would say about AI, don't be afraid of it. You're already using it, you just don't know you are.
Amen.
And you don't have to be in ChatGPT all day, and you don't have to trick out. You don't have to do that. You can use it for certain things. Matthew, I should know this, but what is the tax one that it's the tax AI one that Harsh has?
Oh,
What is it?
that's CPA Pilot,
CPA Pilot.
which is really, really
CPA,
cool. Like,
Yeah.
CPA Pilot is one you should look at because you could
Yeah.
get answers to your clients. But we're basically at the 5-minute warning. So
I'm
should
gonna
we
do a
wrap
real-
up? This has been really fun, I think. I don't know. We got 5 minutes left.
Real quickly to answer Sharon's question, you were asking automation about statements and everything else. I happen to work with a company called LedgerSync, and that is exactly what they do. It's transaction, statement, and image fetching from different financial institutions from the United States. Does a great job of pulling that stuff in to have it all into one single unified area. CPA Pilot, the reason that one was coming up is as a bookkeeper who doesn't do any tax work, I love being able to like reference CPA Pilot, get questions to like answers to some of my questions to then direct my client, give them a leg up to go to their tax professional and have somewhat of a better idea of what to ask. And one of the things I took away from what this whole thing, the concept of edge cases, number one, is so important. So with most automations, where you run into challenges and you become defeated at times with an automation is those edge cases. Edge cases are always going to exist. You're not
And
going to
don't let
automate
it
the
derail.
employee.
Don't throw the
Exactly.
baby out with the bathwater because you've got one client that it won't work for.
Yeah.
The number of times that I say, the number of times I hear, well, I've got this one client, I can't. You don't have to do an all or nothing. You could save all the time for the 9 clients that it does work for and just ring fence the one that it doesn't, or decide to get rid of that client that it doesn't. That's where some folks have they've been like, you know what, we're spending so much more on this one edge case, we're just gonna, separate the relationship. So I could not agree more, Matthew, with this edge case thing.
And Vikram, good point. So obviously with File, you're bringing in all the transactional information from the accounts because you're linking to it. The statement side of it is the key part, really. I was speaking to on that one part of it. So they're a little bit different there. But here's a great example of how, with most apps, there can be overlap within apps when it comes to a workflow. And I always say that if you find an app that does 80% of what you want it to do, you found a great app. If it does more than that, you built it yourself. Just simple as that.
Oh, or you were involved in the building of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Because I have to say, we used some Canadian sales tax experts to build our sales tax compliance for Canada, right? So, sorry to disagree. I love you, Matthew. Yeah.
No, you are correct on it for sure.
So we did have one question that came in from Rajan about are we going to could they have the guide? The guide will be sent out to everyone, so don't worry. I think it'll take maybe up to a week or so to send because we're going to collect everything that we learned and promised in this webinar and put it together in a guide for everybody, and that will come from Forwardly. So everybody just watch for that.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Yeah. So were there any other questions that anyone had? We probably got time for one more, or closing thoughts maybe from Vic or Nick. Closing thoughts from Matthew.
Well, for me, I greatly appreciate having the opportunity to be a part of this. This is something I'm very passionate about is working around workflows and different apps and such. And it's a pleasure to be up here with companies that I know, like, and trust for sure. And I strongly recommend those who are watching, check them out. Each one of these.
I want to read out Tendai's. Can you? This has been a very eye-opening session. As owner of small business practice stuck in overwhelm, I must say this session has given me hope. I believe I can find tech to reduce time taken by menial work and free us to add value to our clients. I'm planning to check out File, Forwardly, Anchor, and Bookkeeper in the next 7 days. I really appreciate the advice given to automate one workflow at a time. I'll also be documenting my workflows.
That's a very nice one. Yeah.
So we can start automating workflows. Surely, thank you. And she thanks they thank the the presenters. So that's a great summation of really what you guys should do. You should do what Tendai is doing.
Yep.
That wasn't a plant, by the way, guys. That was
Nope.
that was an attendee.
Well, thank you guys.
This
Thank you
is
everybody who
amazing.
joined us.
Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to say it's been wonderful working with all of you, and I mean talking about such an important topic. So thanks for the opportunity, all, and thanks for listening in as well, all of you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Successful Bookkeeper, for helping to host this, put it all together. Thank you for my panelists here as well. And as always, here's wishing you all a very successful week.